Okay, guys, 9 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started. Wow, what a turnout. We seriously thought on Friday morning at 9 a.m. like there'd be one person, and it'd be like a little coffee talk. But glad to see everybody. Thanks for coming. My name's Brett Todd. I'm with William Beaumont University Hospital. We're going to be talking about atomic habits, tiny changes, remarkable results.
And I'm Serena Desha. I'm one of the APDs at Duke University. And we're really excited about this book. Anyone read Atomic Habits before? Yeah, it's 15 million books sold in 50 different languages. So this is actually one of, and they've been actually on the New York bestsellers list for over like 290 weeks or so. So it's just like, it's really incredible how this book has really taken the world by storm. And so we wanted to translate this into medical education. So we don't have any disclosures here. But really a few objectives that we'll talk about is how to, create a habit. So I just going to ask you guys, how many days or how long do you think it actually takes to create a habit? You can yell it out. What do you think? 251, I hear it? 90 days, right? Stay tuned. We will talk about that in just a second. And you'll hear that the answer is going to be, it depends, right? But there's a lot of good research and evidence that they actually share in the book that we'll share with you. And then we'll also talk about just how do you really kind of critically appraise the Atomic Habit books to really be able to move your projects forward. And I know Brett and I, we've been friends for a lot of years. We started in Accord at the Medical Education Research Certificate Program, but we learned a lot of this and how to apply it together. And the last is we're going to pull out from the book some specific strategies that you can actually apply. So this is a too long, didn't read, TLDR version of the book itself that if you apply even one of these, it will really transform kind of the way that you live.
Okay, great. So the book title, of course, is Atomic Habits. So what does that mean? Well, atomic means tiny little habits, okay? And the purpose of the book is to demonstrate that if we can routinely apply tiny habits consistently, we can get incredible results. So you can look at this graphic here, and you can see that if, for example, you had a goal in mind and you thought, well, I'm going to work on that and try to improve by 1% a day for a year, you would increase your progress 37-fold in 1 year. So that kind of demonstrates sort of like the acceleration of results that you get with a small amount of effort applied consistently.
And you also see the downward trajectory too, right? So this is why, it's important to be intentional about those changes you make, but it doesn't have to be something so drastic. And so, we come into each academic year or every New Year's with a New Year's resolution, right? Anyone make a New Year's resolution this year? Anyone still doing their New Year's resolution? Like, sorry, our hands kind of come down a little bit, right? Because we have this beautiful goal, and then we have a plan, and then we're like, I just need to be disciplined, and that will get me to that goal, no problem. And then it falls short, and that's really where it gets tricky. So the kind of like punchline to the book is really this: our goals are the results that we want to achieve, but the systems are about the processes that lead to those results. So they oftentimes will say that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall back to the levels of our systems. And that's what we actually, as a culture, have labeled our habits. And so that's why it's really important to think about those systems that are in place, and that's how we can really transform our habits to actually reach those goals that we want. And so let's talk about the habit loop itself. And so this is it's a 4-part series, but it's really important to think about this because then it really does frame everything that we do. So the first that happens is that we have a cue, something that kind of like triggers the thought in our mind. Then we have a craving about it. After that, we have a response that we need to figure out, like, how do I fix that craving that's there? And then last is actually the reward. The simplest version I'll give you is, anyone here with a cell phone? Right? Sometime during this talk, you will get a little ding on that phone, right? That will be the cue. And then you'll have the craving, which is, I wonder what that is, right? And then you'll have the response. I'm just going to go check that real quick to see what it is. And then you have your reward. You have the satisfaction of being like, okay, now I know. And so that's how actually you can see our cell phones can help us, but also distract us from productivity. Is really because we have this habit loop that's really so well ingrained in us. And that's kind of the simplest example I can give you.
Okay, great. So let's take that habit loop concept and let's see if we can generate a good habit using that concept that can help us as aspiring academics, current academics, and educators. How could we use that? So One of the things I think probably most people in this room do a lot of is writing, and probably procrastinate a lot of is writing, because it's tedious, right? It's hard work. And you think about the 5 hours you got to schedule to get it done. What if instead you could create a habit where you did 15 minutes of writing a day? That seems very small. It is small. It's atomic. That's the goal here, right? So can we apply that for 15 minutes of consistent writing a day, and maybe do it for a month? And then you've done hours and hours of work. You probably got your paper written. So let's see. So we're going to use that concept, that habit loop. And the first component of that habit loop was the cue. So we want to take that cue and we want to make it obvious if we're going to make a habit of writing 15 minutes a day. So how can we make it obvious? Well, most of us probably use like a task manager. You certainly use a calendar. Maybe put it on your calendar every day. Write 15 minutes, write 15 minutes. Or it's the top of your task manager every day. So it's just obvious because you look at this thing every day. You can't ignore it. I said to write 15 minutes every day, and I'm going to do that.
And then the second one is actually like the craving itself, so making it attractive. So tying it into something that's really important to you, promotion, kind of making that niche for yourself. But having a craving for it is really key to be able to kind of stick with that habit and grow that habit, or grow that system, right, is what we're actually talking about, grow that system that you're trying to make. Yep. And then the third is actually the response itself, so making it easy. There's so many different ways that you can do this. One simple way is actually on your calendar is just, I always put the link to the Google Doc. So I'm not going to be messing around in my email, not going to be messing around in my Google Drive and spending 20 minutes finding it. It's a date with me in my calendar that has the link to it, and I don't get to have any other tabs open, right? So that makes it the easiest for me to show up and do that work in that 15 minutes without getting distracted with trying to find it. I'll even sometimes just tag in yellow, like, where do I need to pick up on this paper itself, so that I can kind of leave notes to myself about, like, this is the part that you're working on for this paper.
Yeah, and then don't forget to reward yourself. You did your 15 minutes. Maybe you delay your morning coffee until you do that. But 15 minutes done, morning coffee. That's my reward, and that kind of keeps the motivation going.
Yeah, so we have so that's how do you build a good habit. We should talk about just for a second how to break bad habits, including potentially our cell phones or the distractions that keep us from being productive in our lives, Netflix, all the things, right, that happen. So I'm just going to kind of read through the cues, and then Brett's going to kind of give us an example of this. But the first is actually, again, it's the cue, craving, response, and then our reward. So making it invisible, a quick way for the cell phone, leave it in the next room. Right, it's invisible, it's out of the way. The next is make it unattractive. So you can even, there's a lot of great apps. There's an app like Pomodoro, anyone use that? There's another one that's kind of fun. It's you grow trees for how many times you focus as well, but those trees die. I've killed many trees, sadly. I actually had to delete the app because I felt so bad about myself. But it makes it unattractive. I felt unattractive as well because of that. Making it difficult is really important as well, too. So maybe it is like even turning off your internet, right? Maybe you have your document open and the internet's off now, so you can't get to those websites and other things. So that might be an easy way. And then making it unsatisfying as well, too. So Brett has a great example.
Yeah, so I've got a real-world example. This really happened to me, and maybe some of you can relate. I used to get home from an afternoon shift, 2 a.m., and man, if there was a Ben & Jerry's in the freezer, it was gone, shortly after I got home. So I was starting to put on weight, wasn't really enjoying that, and not sleeping that well because I just couldn't stop just eating after an afternoon shift. So bad habit, right? So I have to break it. So what do? Okay, first law is the cue. So I want to make it invisible. The cue for me was I was starving when I got home. I was just way too hungry. So what did I start doing? Well, on shift, eating some healthy snacks. Okay, I just substituted some veggies, maybe salads, trail mix, stuff like that. So the cue went away because I wasn't hungry. The craving, make it unattractive. I talked to my wife about it, and I was like, can we just, if we're going to have ice cream, let's just go out for ice cream, not just have it around all the time. So that went away, and I'll tell you what, when you get home at 2 a.m., eating a bunch of carrots, not as enticing. Yeah. So the craving was gone. The response, make it difficult. When I park my car, I'm in the back of the house. I go in the back door, through my kitchen, right past the freezer, right? So instead now, I park in front of the house, I come in the front door, and there's my staircase up to my bedroom, and off I go to sleep. So I made it difficult to actually get the ice cream, a little friction there, and make it unsatisfying. Well, it's intrinsically unsatisfying to gain weight and not sleep well. So that part was easy. So you can see how we can apply these rules, the habit loop, to make both good and create good habits and to break bad habits.
Awesome. And then again, just so you'll hear us echo this throughout spaced repetition. I'm an educator, so I love to do that. So again, right, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We'll fall back to our level of our systems. So now that we have that habit kind of loop in place and understand kind of how to create a good habit and bad habit, we're actually going to talk about some of the exact strategies from the book itself applying all of this. One of my favorite ones is actually called the habit stacking one. And I feel like this is the one that requires the least amount of activation energy, which I'm all about, because I think that makes us more likely to keep things up. And so really what this entails is actually you think about the habits that you already have in place, and you're actually going to tie in whatever new habit you want to something that you're already pre-existingly doing. So the simplest way would be like, for example, most people like some sort of beverage in the morning. And if you wanted to drink more water, maybe you drink the water before you're allowed to have your cup of coffee. Right, that's one quick and easy way to be able to increase your water intake by doing that. So that's kind of like a real-world example to it. But we can also apply this to medical education itself, too. So it might be actually like, for me, I like to finish my notes. You know, I don't get paid for that time that I'm finishing my notes after work. So my thing is that I always actually change my shoes, which is a little bit weird. But when I go to work, I walk in and out in sandals. So what I do is that I'm not allowed to actually change my shoes to get to the parking garage until I finish my notes. Right? It keeps me efficient on shift, but then definitely afterwards, I'm dictating like nothing else, even if it's after midnight, to get those notes done so that I can get done and get home and know I don't have to worry about anything that happened in the hospital because I finished my work. And then it also opens up a lot of time for me instead now to do all the scholarship and productivity things that I want to do instead. So that's like a way that clinically I've been able to kind of optimize my time at work, but then also open up doors at home as well too. So just a few easy steps for you to incorporate the habit stacking is one, kind of list out your current habits that you're doing every day. Maybe it's having a cup of coffee, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, whatever it is that you do. Some of you go to the gyms, shout out to you. You're my heroes. I might try to habit stack that someday, but not quite there. But list out your habits that you have, and then brainstorm next to it, like what are some of the new habits that you want to create? You know, maybe it might be more scholarship, but you can imagine that's too daunting. Maybe it's actually making a niche, so you might want to actually just read a lot more in that category, in that topic itself, to say what type of publications are actually out there, so you can grow your expertise, and then maybe do talks about it, or see the gap in the literature, so now you can create your own project. So kind of think about what habit is you want. And then foolproofing your plan is really, really important. So what this means is you need to find the right habit to stack together. For example, if you want to go running, but you're doing that as you're getting yourself into bed, you can imagine those don't quite go together, right? So this is probably, instead, maybe the habit stacking will be you lay your clothes out the next morning, right? Make it easy. So lay your clothes out and your shoes out, so right after you brush your teeth, you walk and put on your shoes and go on that run. Right, so that's how you can habit stack it. Or for me, I drink my coffee as I'm sitting on my computer opening that taskbar that has my Google Doc in it. So that's how I've been able to habit stack multiple things to then get to work, and I turn off the internet. So that's how I can incorporate making it easy and taking away some of those bad habits as well. And then just being thoughtful about which new habits you really want to stack with those old ones themselves too.
Okay, great. So let's kind of transition to a method to stay motivated with our habits. So we've established these habits and we've stacked them. How do we keep going with them? Well, a great method is to use the Goldilocks rule. And the Goldilocks rule basically means we want to choose habits that are not too easy, not too hard. They're just right. They're just sort of like right in our skill set, maybe challenging, pushing our skill set a little bit. But going to keep us motivated because we can do them. So some people might call this being in a flow state. So, think about if you're on shift and you're running a great code and like the team's behind you and, the procedures are going well and you feel great, it's pushing your skill set kind of to your max without overtaxing you. It's not like, the proverbial bus crash and there's 20 patients at the same time and we're super stressed out. It's also not taking care of an ankle sprain, which is fine, but really not, what we get out of bed in the morning for. So you can see this in a graphical form here. If it's too easy, we're going to be in the boredom zone here. If it's too hard, we're going to be in the failure zone. We want to be in the Goldilocks zone to maximize our motivation. So here's an example of where I probably should have thought of the Goldilocks zone when I applied a habit with my team. So I'm the APD at Beaumont, and my other APD and my program director, we decided we need to keep up with the residents in terms of our in-training exam prep and their board prep. We were kind of like, we didn't remember all the little details. So we decided we were going to read a 1,000-page board review book in a year. Came out to 3 pages a day, right? Atomic Habits, okay? That's exactly what we're talking about here. Problem was, for any of you faculty who've been out for a long time, board review books, they're horrible. Like, they're so boring. And like, you know everything. You read 3 pages and you're like, maybe there's 1 or 2 things that jog my memory of, but for the most part, like, I don't need to review AFib anymore. Like, it's fine, I've got this. So it was in the boredom zone. I probably should have picked something that maybe had some pathophys in it, little more kind of theory in it. Probably should have read maybe Rosen's or something. That would have kept me in the Goldilocks zone. I definitely do not want to be doing biochem and organic chem. That would have been failure mode, right? So you can see picking the right habits, and I've fallen off. I have not been reading this board review book because it was the wrong kind of area here on the graph. Now, the other important thing to do to maintain motivation is measure your progress. Measuring how frequently you're doing your habit. And you should set a goal ahead of time, like, is it a daily habit? Is it every other day? Is it a weekly habit? How frequently are you doing it? And then monitor it. And it doesn't have to be a complicated Excel spreadsheet or, really anything very challenging at all. There's something called the Seinfeld method. Anybody heard of the Seinfeld method? No. Okay, so Jerry Seinfeld knew he set a goal for himself. He wanted to be a world-class comedian. But to do that, he had to have an amazing repertoire of jokes. Makes sense. So he decided he would write 1 joke a day. Atomic Habits, right? Just not too challenging, but just enough. And to keep track of it, all he did was put an X on the calendar when he did that for a day. And his concept was never break that chain of X's and just keep that chain going. And so that's how you can track it and monitor your progress, and it really does help with maintaining motivation.
And it also makes it satisfying too, right? How many of us add stuff to our to-do list, even though it's like, tie my shoe, right? You cross it off, you're like, yes, go Sri, I did this, right? So we like to cross things off. So the make it satisfying, the reward part, doesn't have to be spending all of our money, right, to buy all these amazing things, although shopping is good therapy as well too. But it could be just simple as crossing it off or ripping up a little Post-it note is what I do, just to kind of get out some of the rage as well too for that. But just different ways that you can kind of make it satisfying. So those X's really make a big difference. And then the 2-minute rule is another rule that's really simple. It says in the book, any new habit that you want to make, it should only take you 2 minutes to do. And you're like, what can I really accomplish in 2 minutes? But it really can make a difference in just being able to show up to that new habit or create that new system every single day, because it's only going to take 2 minutes of your time. Versus I think all of us make those goals, right, of running whatever it is, that takes an hour of your time, right? It's the anticipation takes longer than that, so you might actually be running in your mind for 5 hours before the 20-minute run, right? So this is where it gets tricky. So whatever habit you're thinking about adapting, just think about making it for 2 minutes. And this is really where we're not actually talking about the outcomes again. We're not talking about the goal that you want to achieve, 5 publications this year, 20 publications this year, whatever it is. It's actually talking about the process or that system that you're going to put in place to actually make it happen.
Well, speaking of the 2-minute rule, we only have 2 minutes left, so why don't we skip this slide?
Perfect. But the important thing is really about habit shaping. So you're using the 2-minute rule to really kind of create your habits so that you can actually shape the way that you think about yourself, which actually leads to our next one.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. We can finish this in 2 minutes. But this is also, I think, really a critical concept from the book. Developing an identity around what your goal is really helps you, utilize your habits in the right way. So what we want to do is we want to start with what is... we don't want to start with what is our outcome. Let's take the example of golfing. Let's say you want to be a golfer, right? And in your mind, a golfer is going to shoot 90. Don't start with the outcome of, I'm going to shoot 90. So how do I shoot 90? Oh, I got to practice a lot. I got to get some coaching. I got to read a lot. And then I'll be a good golfer. No. Turn it around. I'm a golfer. What are the processes that a golfer puts in place to achieve their outcomes? A golfer they practice and they study and they get coaching and things and they play a lot. And then eventually you're going to get to 90. So, if you don't get to 90, that's okay because you're still a golfer. You've got that motivation. You're not a failure. You're a golfer working on your processes, which will get you the outcomes. And you can use that as an academic.
Yeah, exactly. And research is the best way. I think a lot of us here, as anyone say, like, I'm not a researcher? Right? Instead, think in your mind like, I am a researcher. So what are the things that you need to do? What are the networks you need to make? What are the skills you need to develop? Where do you need to delegate, like stats, to someone else who has those skills? And that's how you can really kind of transform the way that you do this. Because this is kind of the take-home sheet for the Atomic Habits. But it, again, just once again, falls to the simple rule, which is that we don't rise to the level of our goals. We'll always fall back to those systems that are in place. And so that's why we need to be very intentional about the systems that we're creating to actually be able to reach that outcome that we're looking for. So thank you guys so much for that, and we'll be up here if you have any questions. And our QR code actually has like a lot of these tactics and stuff too for you guys. Thanks.